It was supposed to be a normal dinner, but the moment she spoke, the room went silent. "You'll never amount to anything," she said loudly, pointing at him in front of everyone. Little did she know, her words were about to awaken a silent storm. It was supposed to be a perfectly ordinary Thursday evening, an unremarkable night like any other, where life moved quietly in its usual rhythm. Yet from the moment David Reynolds and his wife Vanessa stepped into the softly lit restaurant, it became clear that nothing about tonight would follow ordinary patterns. For Vanessa, dressed in a stunning emerald green gown that hugged her figure with calculated perfection, carried herself with the kind of confidence that demanded attention, her heels clicking on the polished marble floors like a metronome marking the start of her performance, while David, in contrast, wore a simple charcoal suit, understated, almost invisible in its elegance. A man whose quiet demeanor and calm presence contrasted sharply with her need for spectacle. And as they were seated, the murmurs of other patrons and subtle glances from waitstaff hinted that the audience was already anticipating drama, though they could not have imagined the full scope of what was about to unfold, because Vanessa, in her habitual arrogance, had decided this dinner would be yet another stage to assert dominance, to humiliate the man she saw as beneath her, and with a slow, deliberate sip of her wine, she turned toward him, her smile sharp and calculated, and in a voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear, she delivered the words that would ignite the night. "You'll never amount to anything," she said, pointing at him, a mixture of mockery and satisfaction in her tone. While the room seemed to pause, the clinking of cutlery and soft jazz fading into a tense silence, for David did not flinch, did not raise a protest. His face an impenetrable mask of calm, hazy steady. His hands folding around the wine glass as though the words had merely passed over him. Yet inside, every syllable struck a chord that resonated deeply, and as Vanessa continued, recounting every minor failure, every overlooked opportunity, her voice rising in confidence and theatricality, she failed to notice that the quiet storm brewing behind David's composed exterior was already planning a reckoning. A sequence of events so meticulously designed that every public humiliation she had ever inflicted would pale in comparison to the reversal soon to unfold, and while her audience laughed, whispered, and gasped at the cruelty of her statements, David's mind worked silently, charting each move, each contact, each subtle influence that would, over the coming weeks and months, dismantle the world Vanessa so arrogantly believed she controlled. And as dessert arrived, a final flourish in her public display of superiority, David continued to sit, silent, patient, each bite, each sip, each measured glance a testament to the discipline and foresight of a man whose quiet nature masked a formidable intellect. And by the time they left the restaurant, with Vanessa walking ahead as though the evening had crowned her victorious, David followed not as a defeated husband but as a strategist, a man who had allowed the night's humiliation to become the foundation for a campaign of calculated, silent revenge that would, in time, expose vulnerabilities, collapse her carefully constructed public persona, and demonstrate that true power often resides not in theatrics or loud declarations, but in patience, discretion, and the ability to strike at the precise moment when the world least expects it, setting the stage for a reversal so complete that by the time it became visible to anyone outside the shadows, the lesson would be unmistakable. Arrogance and cruelty, when faced with silent intelligence and quiet strategy, inevitably meet their reckoning. In the weeks that followed, David executed his plan with the precision of a master strategist, quietly contacting colleagues, partners, and influential figures who had long respected his integrity and skill, each interaction carefully calibrated to build leverage and collect evidence, while Vanessa continued in her world of public bravado, oblivious to the subtle currents shifting beneath her feet. And as he worked behind the scenes, the foundation of her public image, her professional reputation, her social connections, even her carefully maintained network of admirers, began to quietly unravel in ways she could neither see nor control. For every meeting David orchestrated, every document he prepared, every whispered recommendation he seeded, was designed to create a ripple effect that would eventually reach a crescendo. And one morning, when Vanessa arrived at her office, confident as ever, she found that key partnerships had dissolved, contracts had been quietly reassigned, and former allies now questioned her judgment, the whispers of incompetence and recklessness growing louder by the hour, and the irony of her public humiliations of David, once a source of pride and amusement to her, now transformed into the blueprint of her downfall, while David, steadfast and calm, observed from a distance, never gloating, never giving her the satisfaction of knowing that he had anticipated every move, calculated every outcome, and engineered every consequence. And as the days progressed, subtle victories accumulated into undeniable patterns. Board members convened to discuss her recent failures, investors quietly withdrew support, and social circles that once celebrated her now questioned her authority. And when the final confrontation came, it was not dramatic or loud, but a quiet revelation of the truth, a presentation of facts, and evidence that left her reputation in tatters, her confidence shattered, and the people who had once laughed at David now looked at him with a mixture of awe, disbelief, and respect. For the man they had assumed powerless had quietly rewritten the rules of engagement, asserting control without anger, without spectacle, proving that patience and strategy could triumph where theatrics and arrogance failed. And in that moment, as Vanessa realized the magnitude of her miscalculations, the weight of public humiliation she had once inflicted upon him returned 100-fold, not in the form of shouting or confrontation, but in the silent acknowledgement of her own folly, and David, having orchestrated the ultimate reversal, walked through the remnants of the life she had tried to dominate, composed, dignified, and entirely unshaken, knowing that the quiet execution of his plan had delivered justice, not vengeance for its own sake. And as the city around them continued unaware of the silent storm that had passed, he reflected on the lessons of patience, resilience, and the true nature of power, recognizing that the evening in the restaurant, the mockery, the laughter, had merely been the catalyst for a far greater narrative, one that demonstrated unequivocally that humiliation, when wielded without wisdom, can rebound upon the one who attempts it, and that the measure of a man is not in his reactions to immediate insults, but in the deliberate, patient, and intelligent orchestration of his long-term response, culminating in a moment of quiet triumph so complete that it left no room for further argument, no possibility of reversal, and no doubt in the minds of those who witnessed the aftermath. David had endured, had planned, and had prevailed, proving that sometimes the softest voice carries the heaviest weight, and that the calmest man in the room may, in fact, be the one who commands it entirely. And as he stepped into the evening light, unbothered by whispers or stares, he carried with him not just the satisfaction of victory, but the knowledge that true power requires patience, intellect, and the unwavering confidence to let time itself deliver the final blow, leaving behind a narrative that would be remembered, studied, and quietly revered for years to come, a testament to the fact that those who underestimate the quiet, the calm, and the patient do so at their own peril, and that arrogance and cruelty, when pitted against strategy and foresight, inevitably face the reckoning they so casually disregarded.